It's a great honor to be a moderator in such high-level panel and also with this really professionally high-level audience here in Academy and also in internet. I will not start to repeat all those really right basic points what were mentioned by the minister and by the rector of the academy, and maybe I will take chance. It's good to be moderator because then you can ask any questions, not wait on the waiting line. But yeah, I'm happy in my life because I have been involved in both areas with the civil protection side and also with defense side. I have been 8 years also chairman of the National Defense Committee in Estonian Parliament. It means I'm quite good knowledge also about that world. But maybe some questions first to our panelists, and I'm also calling you all to ask or to print questions to the members of the panel. First, Hans. When I started as a young Director General of Estonian Rescue Board, then all this civil protection started also to be a topic in the European level. And at those years, civil protection was on the DG Environment. That is a long step forward, and today DG ECO keeps this field and doing very well. Very good next step we saw in your presentation. It means this preparedness union strategy. That is really a step forward. I'm as old person, and I will ask one question to better understand this. Let's say evaluation dynamics around civil defense that you didn't mention in your speech, civil defense. You told about this broad picture and new perspectives, new ways. And my question, just to better understand this environment, we started with civil defense after Second World War, and then Geneva Conventions, and then we turned over to civil protection as a larger topic and challenge. And then now, because our security environment, we again using more civil defense. And then maybe can you bit elaborate the topic? Is a civil defense part of civil protection? Are civil protection and civil defense are some kind of synonyms? Just to understand, and I know that also here in this auditorium, people thinking about it, but there are really several ways to understand and to translate it.
It's an excellent question, Martti. Thank you very much. It's also a very complicated question, and I will try to give a fairly straightforward and easy answer to it. The European Union is a club of 27 member states, which are 27 sovereign member states with their own culture, their own traditions, their own terminology, their own ways of going about things. My job and many of my colleagues' job at the European Commission is to try and keep that together and to try and find a way forward that works for all 27. And in fact, on the civil protection side, it's more than 27 because we have 10 participating countries around the European Union, including Ukraine, by the way. And so, as I mentioned earlier on in my presentation, the realities in these different member states and participating countries is very different. We have a participating country that is at war. In Ukraine, civil protection today is very much about being ready to respond to all sorts of incidents at war. If you look at some of the southern member states, if you take the example of Italy, for instance, Italy is a country that has literally every natural disaster risk there exists is present and insignificant in Italy, whether it's landslides, earthquakes, forest fires, floods, they have it all. So Italy's reality is that it needs to be ready right now for all of these natural disaster risks. And for them, the threat of war is important. It's something to take seriously. But it is probably less acute and less urgent for them than many of these other natural disaster risks. So within that context of many different risks across the European Union, I personally think, and my colleagues agree with that, that we need to be very careful with semantic discussions, and we need to be very careful not to get dragged into terminology discussions. Civil protection is a broad concept. It's a loose concept. It's a concept that can cover all of these different threats and risks from the security side to the natural disaster risks. And therefore, for the time being, we are preferring to stay with that terminology. You may have noticed that our President von der Leyen herself, in her political guidelines when she started the second term, she has called for the creation of a civil defense mechanism. So the term is there. What we understand that to be is a mechanism that prepares the civil protection services or the emergency services of all member states for the threat of war. Obviously, it would not make sense to have a civil protection mechanism and a civil defense mechanism, so we want to keep these two together. So we're catering for this within the framework of the existing civil protection mechanism. We will include civil defense elements into that, but we will stop short from calling it a civil defense mechanism because civil defense means something slightly different in all of the member states. It means one thing in Sweden, it means something different in France, and it means something different in Belgium. I'm a very pragmatic person, and I try to find a way forward in all of this. And for the time being, I think we're better served with the term civil protection to avoid some of these tricky discussions. The important thing is that we all agree that we need to get prepared for more climate change and for war. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah. I thought that I will give advice, but it was exactly what you said. Thank you. Next, let's turn to Sweden, and my question is again maybe philosophical. Because today we discussed about civil defense and international dimension of civil defense, national dimension. And my question is how you are thinking or feeling either civil defense national, which is supported by the other systems, including international, or it is international in nature, and how Swedish legislation reflects this.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, I guess from historical perspective already, civil defense has always been really national concern, and this is something that we are stressing even in these times. However, the national policy guidelines are really clear in the sense that we do need to build it together with other states. And this is exactly where the challenge comes in, like in what scope, in which ways. There's one of the dimensions I didn't talk about today, but there's a really, really strong and perhaps even most important dimension to civil defense that is subnational. So you have the regions and the local municipalities that have de facto the actual task of doing civil defense, you know, and enacting the civil defense and the policies. And what I can see from my research and also research that is there from before me and after me is that there is a really clear discrepancy in translating the policy ambitions to this practical level. And while there is a really clear incentive, not least when it comes to EU and NATO, to build civil defense together with these institutions and other states, this doesn't necessarily translate into the practice because these municipalities and these regions nationally have really different preconditions. They have their local situations, they have their local problems that don't necessarily cover the national strategy as a whole. So in that sense, I would say civil defense is really national, it's really subnational, and really locally planned and enacted. And this is a dimension that I think also from an international perspective we have to talk about more, because now we talk a lot about policy and a lot of rapid changes on policy level. However, these changes are not that rapid in practice because they have to be translated, adopted, and Sweden is perhaps one of the hardest cases in that sense because we have agencies, government agencies that are fairly autonomous from the central government. So when they get guidelines from the central government, they can take their time and kind of prioritize based on their own needs and priorities and what they actually apply in practice and actually enact. In the other states where it's more centralized, of course, then it's easier for the decision makers to kind of implement those policies in practice and kind of come and say that you have to work with EU or NATO in this regard. But in Sweden, it doesn't really work like that.
Thank you. General Cyril, I will now will try to look the things from other angle. If we see and then looking to the situation in Ukraine, where illegal aggression war in Ukraine is still ongoing, and we see that that all attacks against civilians, not against military, is a part of reality. And not accepting any international agreement and laws, then this part came more and more close to defense. And if you can break down society, then you can win the war. It means there is two sides of coin. Continue about this national international, the same story was about defense. Also in our concept, it was really, really national. It is national issue. Today, where we are member of NATO and our defense plans and all concept is based on collective defense. It means our military defense is based in multinational approach already from very beginning. And collective defense is something like cornerstone for NATO. And my question is about civil defense. Can be civil defense also part of this cornerstone, or it is still something different to keep war arena more clear for defense forces, or it is exactly on the same page if we're talking about defense of Estonia, not only territory and independence, but also people.
Is it already on? Yeah. Thank you for the question. And I think that, referring to that one, that attack on civilian now is a part of war. I think if ever war you will look in the past, breaking will of defending nation was always there. The question was only the mechanism how you will get to that will of nation, so that, and do you have a means to attack it, so that, and the development of the current warfare, so that actually providing you that tools, means, and yes, battlefield is transparent on the tactical level, but battlefield is transparent on the as well on the strategical level, and I think that moreover battlefield is transparent in other dimensions, be it cyber, be it economy, be it energy supply. So all of that one is providing that one. So that's, I think that it's really from. I think that it would be a mistake to try to separate military as business of its own, because the war is a wage to impose your will on the other nation. So that's and means of the war. So that again, if we're talking about that, I think that what I personally don't like, if we're talking about hybrid and military. No, military is a part of that hybrid too. Is the only question, so that what the other side is ready to wage and to explore. So that and I really, so that again, don't think that the answer to now put civil defense to something apart
collective defense.
Civil defense as looking to, so that is it now a part of military defense and part of the collective defense, so that, and collective defense, I will come to that one later. So that I think that in the term of execution, they should be continuously be separated. In my presentation, I definitely refer to the tasks that I am the military commander is ready to do. And this is what I'm trained, this is what I'm prepared to do, this is for what I resourced, and this is what I'm ready to execute. Again, relying on that one in the totality of an Estonia. So the actually answer is SKTK, State Defense Plan. State Defense Plan do not separate military from other areas that needed to be as well be protected, and action have to be done, and all the actors need to execute their tasks. So they're coming to that one. With regards of should be so that first of all I will just a little bit remind that yes, definitely there is so the collective defense is in regard of the military defense of Estonia, so that is at cornerstone, but that cornerstone is a rely on other important thing, and I will say that it's Article 3 of NATO. And just a reminder that Article 3 of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is talking about that first and outmost, nation states are responsible for preparing themselves to be ready and to respond to any threat that is coming to them. So I think that when we're talking, yes, reliance and very big connection to the military defense organizing in the way of the collective defense, but it's coming with that one that Estonia, as a member state, taking its obligation to prepare and its capability and capacity so that we can submit to the need of the collective defense. Now, again, without that being a full, I will say that expert, and I'm not giving really advices, but I think that in the particular term of the previous two speakers in the panel, who have been clearly saying that civil defense is a rather that national and even subnational issue with a lot of aspects that pending on legislation, organization, how things are developed. So the way you're located could be so diverse, so that I really do not think that is probably a part of the direct kind of overarching direction, guidance, policy establishment, and I think that it was out of the Niinistö report is suggested, and this is what Commission is currently working on, so that it should be really trying to do so that the common plan, because I will say that base for that plan probably then should be a member state plans. So that because in order to do something collectively, we first have to look so that what we are ready to do as a single nation. And this is coming to that responsibility that we have to bear as a member state nations to be prepared. So again, I will say that we have to be prepared equally in military and civil area. So that, and again, I think that I'm trying to tie that one to that Article 3, but really trying to say that that somewhere we need to establish another commission, another coordinating staff headquarter to develop and coordinating so that multinationally, so the civil defense aspect, so that I really warn us to not to do that. So that is rather my advice, and I think that that is where, if we as a member state will be prepared to execute so that and do what we are responsible for, so that then it's a thing that area will be covered. And then it's a rather coming, what was part of my presentation, that is that coordination and cooperation with military preparedness in the country, because that is where it matters, because it's so different, so that the nature of the problems that we're addressing, again, as I say, that in Italy it's a very much different from what will be in Estonia, so that where again I brought up that evacuation, usage of the road, and fight for resources when some member states, so that is not the issue. So that again, so that I really do not see a mechanism that will be coordinated that one, but rather than providing again, so that important of that one, emphasizing, and I think that this is again based on my tenure in the military committees, so that word of resilience, word of the integrated approach, or word of the comprehensive approach, so that it's as a key, so that to make sure, and here in the countries, so that we have to do that one not on the level of the policy, because policy, it's just a good lines and slogans, even in our state defense plan, so that it's lines of operation and some nice words that have to be done. But then it's agencies, then it's structures and organization have to turn that one to execution. So that, and again, I think that's with analogy of the NATO Article 3, I should say that the pledge to member state is we have to be prepared ourselves. So that, and this is the first line. That is a first line of defense, and it's coming again in that one. Is coming a little bit, even I will say, in civil defense, it's coming even deeper. So that it's again all the advertisement for our citizen and residents, be prepared yourself, so that again that line will start first there, so that I will rather say so that, and this is really not possible to lead from any of the multinational type of organization, so that this is my thoughts on the questions that you ask, so that again keep them probably I will say let's really not to start build some superstructure above, so what is a national responsibility and probably are better to be executed nationally. So again, my personal view.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
In the 50s, NATO had a civil defense committee. And well, at that time, when, like I said, civil defense was really national, and it was used to more exchanging of ideas, but it didn't really. They also realized that NATO can't really do that. However, there were less states involved, and also the threats were really different. So today, to resilience committee would probably take that role. We can see that there's better preconditions to actually for NATO to become a more central actor. But then again, it's also like there's only certain parts that are civil military that NATO could work in, because civil defense area, if we open it up to more sectors, it will be unthinkable to share NATO planning with private companies, for example, that are also part of civil defense and have certain responsibilities there. So if civil defense is, and I think should be, part of NATO's collective defense as well, it would be only for a closed kind of group of actors.
I would like to open this same topic from other angle. It wasn't question about structures, plans, and so on, understandable. It was maybe more question about basic principles. And if we're talking about civil defense, then can help me. Then there is a quite red line when other countries will really come to the to help the country in need. Yes, material support, understandable, everything, but as experts, as a UCP mechanism teams and so on, this goes from disasters, bit to terrorism, but then it ends, and in my logic and also in EU papers, and now we're discussing about this next step, it means a war. In military side, there is an agreement and troops from our partners will come to Estonia to help us. And my question is how far we are in this principle in civil defense.
Many things to say about these issues, but I'll try and focus on one or two key points. I think, first of all, in terms of basic principles, I fully agree with the general. This is first and foremost every nation's responsibility. We need to be very clear about this. Another basic principle is à chacun son travail, which basically means everybody has their role to play. Be it military, be it civilian. We should not be mixing now everything up. I think it is very important that everybody stays within their mandate and focuses on their mandate and takes responsibility for their mandate. The key word, however, is cooperation. And I think the minister put it very nicely this morning in his introduction. Once you start planning for your own part of the responsibility, at least that's my case, and I'm sure it's the same on the military side, you start realizing very quickly that planning on your own is not going to bring you very far. You need to test your planning with the planning of others, be it the military counterparts within your own country, be it your neighbors, be it the private sector, because inevitably you will be working with a number of assumptions that may not survive very long in actual reality. So if, for instance, if you take the example of the Baltic countries, if you think about evacuation scenarios, it is very clear that this will have to be thought through and planned for with all of the different countries in the region, that you have to look at how European instruments that we manage in Brussels can support you, and how you can bring these European instruments into your planning is something that has to be really thought through very, very carefully. So to answer to your last question, sort of, can we already today bring help from, for instance, the European Civil Protection Mechanism to the Baltic countries in a war scenario? My answer would be yes. We will need to adapt procedures, we will need to improvise, etc. But there's nothing in the legal framework that excludes us or prevents us from using the UCPM, the Civil Protection Mechanism, already today. And I'm pretty sure it will function quite effectively because the system we have is a super flexible system. It is an agile system. I was not at all surprised by the way the UCPM works in Ukraine. And the war in Ukraine is the longest, the most intense, and the most complex operation we have ever run. We've been doing this now for 3.5 years. It is primarily material support that we are providing. But there's also been many experts that have traveled to Ukraine in the meantime. There's been many teams that have worked in different capacities, etc. A lot of this has stayed under the radar, but there is absolutely fantastic work that has taken place. In the case of Ukraine, we had to improvise this, and a lot of improvisation has taken place because, let's be honest, we were taken by surprise to some extent. I think now we have the advantage of a little bit of time to prepare for a possible scenario of war in Europe, and we need to use that time wisely. We need to look at the procedures nationally, regionally, but also at European level, and make sure that that European support from other member states, be it material or expertise or teams, can feed into the planning at national level. Thank you.
Thank you. And question for our last keynote speaker. You had, so theoretical, what was really good and really put fruit for thinking. My question, maybe it's easy, but it is old play of words. Probably you know it, that I know what I know. I know what I don't know. I don't know what I know. This is medical side. And then I don't know what I don't know. This is a challenge. Can you advise how to reach this last challenge? What is really related to our topic, what is really uncertainties world?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good and a really hard question, but I think it connects to the things that I mentioned about the kind of critical framework on challenging one's own assumptions about the, well, present, but also about past, and maybe through that also questioning our ideas about the future, whether they are something that we have ourselves or whether they are coming from someone else. And I think the question also relates to this discussion about risk awareness and situational awareness throughout European Union, because I think that should be the starting point to have. Not that everybody needs to agree on everything, but to have a kind of a situational awareness, enough common ground to build on, and maybe to also imagine those desirable and secure futures. And that would be a great starting point. And I need to take a closer look, as you mentioned in your keynote, about this risk dashboard for the European leaders to use. That could be a good starting point for a kind of European-wide situational awareness. I don't know if this answered your question, but that was the first thing that came to my mind.
Absolutely, yeah. We have to learn, and we have to learn from each other and try to understand each other, and then we're starting to know what we don't know. and then
Exactly.
we can go forward. Yeah, thank you very much. Lauri?
Yes?
Do we have a
We have the jury's vote.
list? Excellent.
But I started with the most intriguing question what I have here, and it has the most likes too, so I'm very happy to present it. I think it's actually for anyone to answer. And now listen to that. How to create positive narratives about preparing for war for society. Now I changed a little bit on the second part of the question. There is a feeling that there is a little bit too much of a military dominance, which might create a bit of more tension. But in order to prepare for any kind of crisis and war, and let's talk about the war, then maybe something that needs to be done differently. And this is something what I would propose to us from this panel.
Yeah, let's go how to move from the fear to self-confidence.
No, I think it's an essential part, and we had quite a bit of discussion internally within the Commission around this when we presented the Preparedness Union or developed the Preparedness Union strategy. The last thing we wanted to do was create panic or add to the panic, and we very much tried to develop a positive narrative around this. Preparedness is, at the end of the day, about deterrence. The better we are prepared, the less likely it is
It's a
we
higher
will
price.
actually get into a war. I think if we can show to the adversary that we are well prepared on the military side and we're even better prepared on the civilian side, we will be resilient, they might actually think twice before taking the next step. So I think that is one part of it. The other part of it is also that this preparedness has a very important societal dimension to it. And I think it is a good moment in time to develop the notion of societal responsibility for individuals. It's perhaps something we have lost a little bit over the years, but it is something that is now clearly gaining territory again in different parts of Europe. If I look at the disaster statistics in Europe, it's very clear that vulnerable parts of our societies are overrepresented in all statistics on fatalities. If you have a flood, the number of elderly or the number of persons with disabilities will always be overrepresented in the number of fatalities. Is that something that we accept as a society in Europe nowadays? I think the answer clearly has to be no. Is it possible for professional civil protection services to protect each and every elderly person or person with disability? Very clearly, we run into the limitation of the system very quickly. You can't be everywhere at the time that... so the only solution for these sort of problems is to create a society where people care for each other, to create neighborhood networks, to create citizen networks, where we actually know who of our neighbors might get into trouble if there is a natural disaster, where we know whom of our neighbors would need a little bit of help in different sorts of crisis situations, etc. And I think if we're now thinking of developing volunteer programs at European level. I mean, not for us to develop them, but for us to finance and promote them, basically, so that they can shape up in different member states. I think we need to recognize and encourage the role of volunteers much more in our societies. We need to encourage individual responsibility, neighborhood responsibility, social networks, the importance of schools. My kids never get taught first aid skills at school. If there is one thing I would like them to know and to learn for the future, it's that sort of skill. So we need to look again at the school curricula. We need to look at how to better make sure that residents, citizens, tourists are aware of the risks they run in a certain area. If you travel to the Mediterranean in the summer months, you're likely to come close to forest fires. So you need to be advised on how to behave in that sort of situations. When I travel to Asia, I will find in my hotel room a little leaflet on what to do in case of an earthquake. You might think that's scary. It actually helps me to feel reassured, and I think most tourists do, that there is a clear plan in place, a clear preparedness, and that you know what to do in case things get rough. And we need to develop that culture on the European side. There's nothing negative about it. It's really about being ready and prepared. Thank you.
And of course, Jana, I think, have also
Yeah,
good advice because you have this long-term process, a long time.
No, but I will continue on the aspect of individual responsibility, because I think one of the positive narratives that we have in Sweden, or we are currently working on as well, is the aspect that to kind of show individuals that even something that seems small can, in a war situation, be a really big contribution. And I guess here it's a really great example comes perhaps from the fact that a lot of the battlefield today is digital. You know, it's in cyber domain, and to kind of working with the psychological defense and people's resistance to disinformation, or kind of teaching them how to recognize manipulation, but also to show them what they can do online. And I think Ukraine has really great examples of how really, like, anyone with an access to internet or a Facebook account can be part of defense, can be spreading information, can be, you know, resisting information they have been fed, to kind of basing it on their experience and knowing that not everything perhaps is, you know, trustworthy, and to kind of have also these baselines. Like in Sweden, we know that Sweden will never surrender, you know. So any information that would come that would tell you otherwise, we need to teach everyone that you do not trust this information. And this you can do with really, you know, small acts of kind of preparedness and kind of highlighting the individual responsibility and the really small tasks that you can do in a situation, whether it's online or if it's, you know, outside being volunteering somewhere or so on. So I think psychological defense has a really important place in that as well.
And I think that I will be really not add much to what was said before, so that I think that as well from my perspective, we in parts of the building that narrative, and again it's will be not positive la 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 la, so that we can sing the song. It's the questions that be prepared, and that again the individual, and it's all starting from the individual preparedness. So for Estonian part of the audience, I will advise to again to look so that you have Ole Valmis app that our Defense League have been developed and actually have already containing quite a lot of information that you can think that are you individually prepared for worse things that might come. And then it's a coming again to that mighty word of the deterrence, where we have to as well so that build up so that whatever we're doing as exercises and developing of the capabilities that actually contributing to that one, that we are to changing calculus of the site, so because we are ready. So that for that one, and I think our readiness is contributing to the deterrence, and I think that is based on that one we should so that really put that one positive think to that one. So really not to be paralyzed with a scare, but act, because that it's in your hand as well, in hand of individuals and in hand of organizations who are responsible.
Yeah, it's easy to agree with everything being said. I think it could be summed up in a way that resilient society is also a good place to live in everyday life. I think that with all the talk about the whole of society approach, it's also a lot about the agency of the individuals and different societies, and we need to have those structures that support social cohesion of our societies, because that's kind of the whole, everything builds up on that. And we also need to be able to kind of answer some, in a way, soft questions on how to slow down polarization, or how to reduce loneliness, or how to support trust in decision-making or institutions or democracy in itself. And I think that's also a big part of societal resilience. And I just wanted to repeat myself one more time that I think it was a futurist, Adam Pollack, that actually said in the 60s already that societies only stay vital as long as they can imagine desirable futures. So it's really important to be prepared for the worst, for the bad scenarios. But alongside that, we also need hope. We also need desirable future images.
Thank you for answers. Maybe short question?
I have more, because I think that you all covered very well also the part where how to answer the question of how to create this lasting awareness of civil defense. But again, we are talking in the language of that what should be done. Let's now go a little bit concrete. Where do you think where do you see the opportunities to encourage? What could be the practical measures to encourage the people who ignore the issue or don't think about it? Or I provocatively add here that maybe someone has to be left behind. Or how do you see?
I saw before that somebody also posed a question to me. I think one of the aspects that in Sweden we work now on, or have become aware of, thanks to many research on this field, is that, you know, the brochures that we're sending out, the information, when doing studies on people about their awareness about risks and threats and what they should do in case of war, it shows that they're really aware, because they have the brochure, maybe not all read it, but they know. However, when asked how much water you have at home, nobody,
liters.
yes, so nobody has really actually prepared. So there's this interesting situation here where you have a really high awareness, but there's no action behind it, no preparedness behind it. So now one of the discussions in this regard is that how do we get people to actually prepare? Because one thing is the awareness of risks and threats of war or war itself, but nobody has a radio at home, nobody has, pots and pans that they can use in matches and so on. And this comes down to also like psychology or the educational aspect, like how do we learn? How do we, and you have to really go back to school and the education and the aspect of pedagogy in it, how people actually learn, because there is really this discrepancy in us thinking that we are prepared or getting this false sense of preparedness and the actual material preparedness in itself.
Not by force, education.
By education, I think it's also by also acknowledging that just by informing people that and them thinking that they are aware of the threats, that don't translate into actual preparedness. So then, by actually acknowledging that, decision makers can take steps to maybe send radios to people. Like, we're not doing that in Sweden, but maybe we should. But just to kind of acknowledge that just by awareness or spreading information, this is not enough. You need actual steps to do that. And this comes down to educational system, to how we speak about it, how we can be really more concrete in our communication, and crisis communication, all these aspects kind of play into that.
Thanks. I have one specific question for Mr. General, and because it's written here, and it's also a very good point coming also from the introduction of the exercise today. Do you have any plans to involve and to communicate with non-governmental and international organizations such as OCHA, UNHCR, WHO and IOM, both during the exercise and in actual crisis situation? Because the Ukrainian experience shows that these actors, as well as ordinary citizens, will seek to assist civilians, including internally displaced persons, regardless of the actions taken by the state agencies. By the way, I love the ending of the sentence because we have a joke in Estonia saying that the patient survived regardless of the doctor's efforts. But anyway, how do you see, how important it is for the military to engage with such organizations?
Yeah, and I will leave that one to the state agency to deal with. So that leaving me with my military business, and in Estonia there is responsible state organizations that will be coordinate and communicate whatever is needed to be done. So really, I do not see my role in coordinating and communicating with that one, because that is definitely is a part of another military conflict. So that where it was seen and foreseen that the military is responsible for everything. Here I will be but of course, recognizing that some of them will be present in as well as the combat zone, so that and I have to deal with them, coordinate their presence, but I'm not the major actor. With regard to the exercise, I think that as of now they are not really part of the exercise design. So I think that we are first is looking for how we're dealing with our own, so that coordination and issues with the state agencies. But again, I think that I really should not look so that how much of the adding of that layer will help the decisive lancer. So it's a part of the other exercises, because again, training objective for the decisive lancer is a little bit different if a particular response to the decisive lancer, so that we really need to make sure that our own state coordination between the different actors is there. But yes, they have been right to be present, but again, it's not military that will be conduct coordination with them.
Everyone needs to do their own piece. A quick comment from Hans, and then I give
very quick comment in the same direction. I think it is very important that these international humanitarian agencies, which are really big organizations with their own procedures, their own ways of going about things, very important that they interact with the civilian part of the government first and foremost, and that there is a good sort of cooperation set up there. In the case of Ukraine, for instance, it took them a year, I think, more or less, to get used to the fact that there was actually a functioning government in Ukraine which was calling the shots and which was in charge of the country. Many of these organizations tend to work in conflict situations, crisis situations, where there is no such functioning government. So very important to to get that part also prepared beforehand and to establish contacts there. And very important that these UN agencies understand that they need to support the state structures. Thank you.
Matti, I give
Yeah,
back for a wrap-up.
still there can be some exemptions, like, for example, Doctor Without Borders. I know they have a role also in war medicine in Ukraine, in front with the military. And I know that they were in Estonia, also discussed about it. And I know that there is potential idea involve them also to the exercise, how they can, it is two ways. One is a humanitarian way and civil population. Other one is really war medicine and war zone, for example.
Yeah, if it's coming with some of capacity to strengthen the Estonian or NATO forces, so that we will just put them part of the planning process. But I really do not see so that is a role of organizing how the support will be delivered will be rely with the military.
Matti, wrap-ups. Time is up, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, time is over. Already 3 minutes we took from your lunchtime. I would like to really thank our panelists. That was interesting discussion. And in Estonia, I'm happy that most of those inputs in your keynote speeches were in exactly same way how we are in Estonia thinking. And that is one huge challenge. Is we're trying now also in Estonian legislation to make step forwards and to put into one law civil crisis and national defense to harmonize and to solve those challenges. But we got also during today's presentations into one. And this is a huge challenge, but we are going. And hopefully for January, we're going to have some kind of better picture and version maybe to adopt. And I'm leading member to keep this draft. And that was where I'm back in civil defense and military defense business. And I'm happy that I got a lot of good ideas and points from here also to improve our legislation pace and theory. And thank also Academy who has to be really, really crucial player in this new way, new concepts to fulfill it into Estonian theories and frames. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the
Thank you,
panelists. Big round of applause. Thanks for the insights.